Happy morning, friends. Here's yours, Dr. Ajanta. Welcome to day 28 session. Today we are just going to continue the for loop session, and here is the discussion on nested for loops. Nested for loop is a for loop inside another for loop. A nested loop has one loop inside of another. In Python, you can use any loop inside any other loop. For instance, a for loop inside a while loop inside for loop, or in and so on. It is mainly used with two-dimensional arrays. So in nested loop, the inner loop finishes all of its iteration for each iteration of the outer loop. That is, for each iteration of the outer loop, inner loop restarts and completes all its iterations. So then the next iteration of the outer loop begins. Here it is the example and the syntax. Kindly have a look of this, dear friends. That is for loop, that is this is the outer loop, and here for the elements in sequence which just ends at the body of the outer loop. And inside the for loop, there is one more for loop where it we just specified as the inner for loop. And once after finishing all its iteration of the inner, it just jumps onto the body of the outer loop. So it continues the body of outer loop. And here you can just see it by this diagram, that is as in this example. So here we are just making a for loop inside one more for loop where we are printing a multiplication table of the first 10 numbers. And the outer loop we are having is a for loop which uses the range and this function to iterate over the first 10 numbers. The inner for loop will execute 10 times for each outer number. So in the body of the inner loop, we will print the multiplication of the outer number and the current number. And the inner loop is nothing but the body of the outer loop. Let me just see it with this example as in a code snippet. Kindly have a look of this, dear friends. See the same here, it is specified, and once on execution, let I just make the explanation. See here, dear friends, in this program, the outer for loop is iteration number from 1 to 10. And the range returns 10 numbers. So totally number of iteration of the outer loop is 10. In the first iteration of the number loop, the number is 1. In the next, it is number 2. Until it just goes till 10. Next, the inner loop will also execute 10 times because we are printing the multiplication table up to 10 for each iteration of the outer loop. The inner loop will execute 10 times. So in each iteration of an inner loop, we can calculate the multiplication of these two numbers. Okay, let me just see with another example where we can just have the list of the functionality. And see here, dear friends, here we are just going to take the person name and only just list of the skills we have to include it. Okay, so rather than that, we are just not much more thing related to this for first name or last name or any other thing. Just we want to make use of this list one by one, and that we are just going to execute in a list order. Okay, so let I just execute here. It is, dear friends, see here, the first it just takes the key person, and second it just goes into the skills, where inside the skill it has an inner loop of this skills. Once after, it just comes out of the skills and it ends the person. Here only the exact class of this person, that is the structure of this person, would have the outer loop, and to that of inner list, which it just has the list of skills. Okay, let me just move on to the next example where Here it is exercise. Just write a code to add all the prime numbers between 17 to 53 using while loop. And see here, dear friends, here we are not just going to make use of that while functionality. Just with the for examples, we are just going to make it, and inclusion of break. Here we are seeing this example. Okay, so see here we have to just take 17 to 53, and here it is the exact prime number, and that range has been given, that is initiated in the outer loop, and each everything we have to get included, and then it has to make the summation. And if it is just makes any modulation, you are just going to break it, or else you have to sum it one by one in the for loop, and then it has to print the whole sum off. And here it is the execution, dear friends. So from 17 to 53, it just prints the number, and last once for all in the outer loop only, it just prints the whole sum off. Next, we are just having an iterated through and nested for loop. That is, see here, dear friends, we are just having color of red and pink, and element of flower and watch. And how we have to just make it is, this is the exact example of a two-dimensional, that is the 0 comma 1 and 0 comma 1 of the elements. So when on just making the execution, it has to give 0 comma 1, 0 comma 0 and 0 comma 1, and 1 comma 0 and 1 comma 1. That is how it has to display. So in that way, the for I in color and for j in element, both are the nested one, and here it is just going to print the outer I and inner j, that is outer body of that element and current inner element. And see here, dear friends, once for all it finishes this element loop, it enters the color loop, and it finishes the full color, that is element loop, and then it just goes for the next color. And see here, once after the execution, so first it just takes the red color, and it finishes the element red flower, red watch, 0001. And next it just goes for the color index, that is the second one, that is the pink, and from there it just makes pink flower, pink watch, that is 10 and 11. Okay, let me just make use of one more thing by list of list. See here, dear friends, here it is the list of list. Inside a list we are having three elements, and each three element, it has its own three elements. And how to display it, here it is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, as in the matrix. You can just display it, which we just say as list of list. But here, what is the exact objective of this exercise is to just sum of every element. That's it. So here what it just takes, so from the list of list, it just going to make use of 1 2 3, that is 0 of 0 0 of 1 0 of 2, and next 1 of 0 1 of 1 1 of 2, and 2 of 0 2 of 1 and 2 of 2. So how come this is that goes of each and every iteration of the outer and to that of current, and here we need the summation. So it just makes the total, and at last it just makes the execution of the sum. Okay, here, see dear friends, this is the example where I just want to specify where I am, to which iteration is there, or I just want to count what is the number of iteration is just specified. Because on making how many iterations, see here I'm just having two elements in a list, but each two element of this list, it just has three elements of its own. So here, how many total number of iteration it just takes. So that is what I want to make it of print. Here we are not making it as a summation. Here just we are want to make the count. So here, as the first element passes, first element of the list passes, and inside that first element, we are having three elements of its own. That is the inner elements. Okay, and there it is not just going to fetch the element, just making the count of it, and once for all it just increases the incrementation of the count and then makes on to the inner loop iteration. Once for finishing it, it just goes on to the next element of the number list. And here it is the exact output. Dear friends, kindly have a loop. That is iteration 0, it prints 1, iteration 1, it just prints 2, until 6 every element of the numbers has been executed. Next, let me just see printing of some patterns. See, dear friends, actually, this is very, very unique things and fantasy things when we just make use of nested. And see, here it is a code snippet where this pattern here, it just uses to make it as an whatever the pattern and how the different types of patterns we can just make use of it. And in this program, the outer loop is the number of rows to be printed. The number of rows is 5. So the outer loop will execute. Here it is the exact outer loop. So the outer loop would execute 5 times. Next, it just goes to the inner loop, and it is totally of the number of columns in each rows. And for each iteration of this outer loop, the column counts gets incremented by 1. Here it is just. And in the first iteration of the outer loop, the column count is 1. In the next, it is 2, because here it is, we are just making it as 1 comma 1. So it just on next, the count is 2, and so on. The inner loop iteration is equal to the count of the column. In each iteration of an inner loop, we print a star. And therefore the things. Okay, let me just see it with an example, dear friends. See here. So let I just execute this one. Here it is. So the rows of 5 rows, and each and every rows and this exact number, it just takes us to that of column, and this would be printed. Okay, if do you want to make it just gets the number from the user and then if it is printing. So let I just make the same thing by the user input. Here I just provide the 7 as the inner number of rows, and once for all, kindly just see here. So we are just having 7 rows and 7 columns. Okay, next, see here, dear friends, instead of star, if I just want to print the number, okay, print the number, I'm just making by use of range. I'm just making it by use of range. And see here, number of ranges, as it is 1 to 6, it just has totally 6 numbers. And each time it just print it, and as it is of 6 numbers, it just prints from 1 to 5. And here it is the exact functionality. Let I just show you the execution of the output, and see here, this is how. And the same thing, you can just make use of the method too, where see here, dear friends, within these two things, one, you have just specifying directly about the rows. Okay, you are just specifying the rows, and with that rows you are just making this iteration and making that number to be presented. As previously in the example one, we have just specified the how many number of rows. Yeah, it is 5. So 5 into 5. So I need 5 rows and 5 columns. So in that same manner, if I just specify 6, yeah, it is just comes from 1 to 5, and here it is the output. You can also make use of that by some more methodology, where here you are just specifying n is equal to 5, where you are giving the number, and here x is equal to 0, where that is the range of that rows, and you are incrementing that uh, variable by one on, instead of making it into a ranges. Here you are just incrementing it by one inside the loop, as a function, as an one among the statement. So you can also make use of the same thing here to the same execution results which is there. Next comes the example 4. Dear friends, see here how this exact output is 1, 2, 3, 4 in the column wise, and it just specifies it in the manner of each and every element in the row wise, and then comes to the column wise. But here what we are just going to see, the next pattern is each and every column, it has to come 1, and then it has to move on to that of incremental. So here once on each and every column, it has to increase the row, that is the element to be added up. Okay, so that is how here. And the first method, let me just make use of the range, and we are just making it as an inner part. Let I execute it. See here, dear friends, to the above and to this of method. So see here, this is 1, 2, 3, 4 in the first column, but here to the first column it is 1, 1, 1, where we have just given this row into that of range, and the rows here it is incremental. And same thing you can also make use of that by specifying here as the exact for loop, where you can just specify it by the column range of I. Okay, first you are just making use of the input statement from the rows from 1 to 5, and then column as 1. And once on all finishing every incremental by this inner body, you are just going to outer for loop. And here to the same thing in method 2. And here it is one among the thing, a unique pattern. See here, dear friends, here what we are just making is the -1. -1 is in the sense, see, when you just specify this as 1, 1, 1, here 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, and 5. And in the previous example, we have just seen 1, 2, 3, 4 as a first, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. So even though you can just make use of that as like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 5. So these are all some of the prints. But here what I just want to make in this method, that is the example 5 in method 1, I just making it as a -1, where in the sense here, see, once on execute, you can just see the difference, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and again it starts from 1. Okay, again it starts from 1, and it just reached to that of 4. Again it just decrement by 1, and so it makes the printing of 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 1. So how the exact method, or what is the exact pattern, kindly observe it and make use of the functionality. And here you can also make use the same thing as to that of previous one and only thing. See here, dear friends, here you are just making it 1 to 6 and I 0 minus 1. And here in method 2 from 0 to 5, and here I plus 1 and minus 1. So this is the method 2. So both are things are same, and here too the same execution it would just comes, but you can use any one of the method. Okay, next comes that of sixth example, where you are just going to have a reverse from it. And see here, dear friends, previously we have just made use of the normal pyramid, that is from above till it just goes broad towards the downwards. But here from the broad towards the downwards, which it just shows the reverse pyramid. And here what we just want is we want to print the star to be there instead of numbers. So let me just first make this example with the star and see how this exact pyramid is set off. So totally I just need 1 to 6, which is just from that 1 to 5 elements. Okay, and here it is also in row wise, and to that of column wise it is 5 into 5 elements, and it just gives I minus 1 and decrement of minus 1. Okay, fine. Let me just make use of that reverse pyramid with example 2 with the numerals. And see here, dear friends, let me just make use of the number that ranges from 54321, and it just starts from 0 comma 5. So here the inner things we are just going to have 0 comma 5, but what is the outer is it is going to start with 54321. And see here, once for all, this is what 54321, that is the outer line, and each and every iteration it just goes on to that of inner loop. And the same thing you can also make use of that same numbers but with different patterns is, see here, dear friends, here we are just making it 555 in this one row, but let us just make, yeah, everything let it be in a 1 2 3 manner, but in a reverse pyramid. Yeah, here, so we are just specifying the row range first, and then comes to the column range, where in row range itself we are just specifying it as a -1, but when coming to the column range it is incrementing. So incrementing in the sense, first it has to 1, and then 2 3 4 5, it just moves on. Okay, and let me just make the last statement of today's session. Yeah, for loop in one line. So we can also formulate the for loop statement in one line to reduce the number of code. And with an example, let me just see it. See here, dear friends. So this is the exact first list and second list we are just having, and we need to append the both, and we are just want to make the resultant in the final. Okay, so final list. So here it is the final list, it is an empty list. So what I just want is I want to take the first element from the first list, and next each and every element to be there added to that of the first element of the second element, sorry, second list. Okay, and next first element of the second element in the second list of first element of first list with the third element of the second list. So in that manner I have to just make this iteration, and kindly have a look of this, dear friends. So this is how the output is. Okay, the same thing. So totally this we are just getting it into a 3 lines. That is, first I have to make it into the first list and as the outer loop. Second, I have to go for the second line, that is second list, as that of inner loop, and then going for the body of that inner loop. Okay, but instead of that, if I just specify this within a single line, see here, first for in first and next for j in second, what I have to do, I want to do I plus j. So what is I? It is in first, and j, it is in second. Yeah, we are getting the same list as an output. Kindly have a look of this. And next we are having the one more example. So I want to print the even number by adding 1 to odd number in the list. So here I am making the list of odd number, and I have to add 1 to that of odd list, and it has to print it as a 1. If it is already odd, the even, it should just skip it off. That is how we are just going to make use of this uh, uh, print functionality. See here, 1579, it is outputted as 2 6 8 and 10. And here it is one more example. See here, dear friends, x, that is going to be as 30, 60 and 90. And when on just going for y, it is 60, 30, 90. Okay, and if x is not equal to y, yeah, it is just going to print. If x and y are equal, by in the sense, see here, first it has to go for 30 and 60. Yeah, it is not equal. And again it just goes for 30 and 30. Yeah, it is equal, so it should not print it. Okay, and next it just goes for 30 and 90. Yeah, it just prints. So in that way it has to print. And let me just get the final list by making, see here, dear friends, 30 60 30 90, 60 30 60 90, and 90 60 90 30. So this is how one more patterns are there. Okay, and next one more for loop session is that, which we can just make accessing the index of for loop by using the index. And let me just discuss in tomorrow's session. Thank you, dear friends.